There's a kind of faith that feels invisible. It doesn't get affirmed, it doesn't get noticed, it doesn't get rewarded with momentum or applause. And yet, this may be the truest test of the interior life. Not whether you can begin well, not whether you can speak beautifully, but whether you can remain faithful when no one else seems to be watching. Hi, I'm Greg, and welcome to the Interior Life. So far, we've been laying a foundation. In episode 1, we named the rule: create as offering, not performance. In episode 2, we learned restraint, silence before speech. Today, we come to what may very well be the most difficult discipline of all: faithfulness without applause. There's something in us that quietly asks, is this worth it if no one sees? And that question reveals more than we realize. Because the moment faith asks to be seen before it obeys, it has already shifted its center of gravity. We rarely say it out loud, but we think it all the time. It shapes our decisions more than we care to admit. It shows up when consistency feels boring, when obedience feels unproductive, and when fidelity seems inefficient. This is where many interior lives begin to fracture, not because faith is lost, but because recognition is delayed. See, the quieter truth is this: it's worth it precisely because God sees it. God builds before He increases. He forms us long before He multiplies our gifts. I learned this the hard way. I thought I was building something for God, but He was quietly building me. The work looked public, but the formation, it was entirely interior. And interior formation happens in obscurity. Not because God enjoys hiding fruit from us, but because publicity too soon, it can distort the soul. Applause introduces pressure. Pressure introduces performance. Performance slowly replaces obedience. And then without even realizing it, we stop asking, is this faithful? And start asking, is this effective? I can't explain this, but I find it comforting to know that most of Jesus' life was hidden. No platform, no validation, no visible outcomes. 30 years of obscurity for 3 years of public ministry. See, we are rarely taught how holy and sacred obscurity actually is. But Scripture makes it unmistakably clear. God does His deepest work where no one is watching. And Jesus calls this the secret place. The interior life should not be rushed or exposed. It needs to deepen its roots first. We all want shortcuts that feel spiritual, right? Speaking sooner, sharing earlier, producing faster, measuring impact immediately. But faithfulness has a slower vocabulary. It speaks in daily return, in quiet obedience, in unseen consistency. See, some plant, some water, some prepare the soil. Not everyone is called to harvest, but all are called to be faithful. And this is where many good works get abandoned, not because they're wrong, but because they're done in silence. Faithfulness is not passivity. It's active trust without feedback. It's knowing that God is working behind the scenes, weaving our small acts of obedience into His larger story. Enthusiasm might move us to say, I'll pray for you. But devotion recognizes that God has already been quietly forming our hearts. See, I realized recently that I had grown comfortable saying, I'll pray for you. When God was actually asking me to pray right then and right there. Fidelity was calling me into action. And this is where the interior life matures, from enthusiasm into devotion. There were many years in my life when I confused the lack of applause with lack of calling. I wanted validation. I needed that reassurance. But when I began to create as offering and allowing the work to unfold slowly with silence and restraint, I started to recognize the deeper work that God was doing in me. And it led me to ask, do I really need proof before I obey? If you're faithful in silence, you will not need noise later. When God forms someone in obscurity, He doesn't have to manage the consequences of visibility later. The interior life has already been ordered. Faithfulness without applause is not punishment, it's preparation. And often, well, it's love in its purest form.